of 12 million young people into the labor market, but we only create 3 million jobs for youth. Could you provide insights into the key limitation factors that you see contributing to this challenge?
Yes. No, it is. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Christian, and very warm welcome to you all. Thank you so much, and congratulations to Young Africa. It's a very special occasion, so I'm happy to be here. Yeah, your question is, in a nutshell, the million-dollar question at the moment, because this is what is on everybody's mind. We are very aware, and thank you very much, Mr. Samb, for painting the picture. I'm very happy that you also gave a positive twist to it, but it's also at the moment, it's also a very bleak picture. If you look at the figures, there is a huge gap when it comes to the available job opportunities, the available economic opportunities, and the amount of young people that arrive to the labor market every year. And unfortunately, it's only increasing in spite of our best efforts. And the reasons are several. First of all, it's just it's a numbers game, as was clearly demonstrated. The numbers are huge, but okay, that's a given. And I like to look at it also from the positive side. There are opportunities when it comes to having the numbers, but it's a fact. So the demographics is clear, and we need to work with that. The second reason is that some of the sectors are not yet fully developed or can be better developed. Sectors that can accommodate many more youth, for example, or places on the labor market. When I'm speaking about sectors like agriculture, for example, it's still very traditional in Africa at the moment, and it has huge potential. Not only potential, it needs to feed these increasing numbers, but for the moment it's still conservative, traditional, relatively small scale. So we need to invest in innovation and in new ownership structures, for example, to promote entrepreneurship. So that's the next challenge. And this is just the agricultural sector, but then we know where the jobs will be in the future. We know they will be in the green economy. We know they will be in the digital economy. Agriculture I already mentioned. So it's also a matter of promoting these sectors, making sure that there's an enabling environment for companies and businesses within these sectors. And the third important reason is, I think, something that Young Africa really tries to do, and was also mentioned in the clip. It's the skills gap. There is such a large divide between what traditional education systems deliver when it comes to young people that enter the labor market and what companies are actually requiring. They want life skills. They want people that they can, start immediately instead of having to train them on the job for a few months before they're able to do the job. And unfortunately, there's still quite a road to travel there. So we need to invest in TVET education, for example. We need to invest in life skills, digital skills, everything that's needed to do those jobs of the future.
Thank you. It's a very interesting perspective and of course it's a $1 million question, as you said. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I want to ask Nuria. You see everything from a perspective also from the Dutch business operating. Where do you see the most promising opportunities for them to contribute to empower and support of African youth in skills, for example, like Jurriaan just mentioned?
Just a brief background information. Perhaps not everybody is familiar with NABC, so we are the Netherlands African Business Council, and we are a network organization of 250 Dutch, mostly Dutch businesses who are active or would like to be active in Africa. 60 to 65% of our members are active in agriculture, because it's also a sector which is very prominent in the Netherlands. And yeah, that's for us a big focus, but also green energy, hydrogen or renewable energies, etc. One of the things that we are seeing more and more the last couple of years is on the one side, members really wanting to invest on the African continent. So from, let's say, a historical perspective, Dutch companies are much more traders. And that's changing because when I look at our members, they are aware of the fact that there are so many opportunities in there, and not only to develop the market there to export to Europe, but really a big market on the African continent. That's one. And the second is what we're also seeing. We are in much contact with the continent, also with a lot of African embassies in the Benelux, and it's all about, especially when we're talking about horticulture, agro-processing. So not only developing and importing fruits and vegetables, for instance, it's really about processing on the continent itself. And that's where you see when companies are aware of that, that also brings a lot of opportunities in terms of skills. Very recently we have the COVID, and then what you often are experienced, or some companies experience that, for instance, they would bring out labor from outside, or especially high skills from outside Europe, technicians to support them. And then COVID hit, and then for many of them, they're also like, there was an awareness, like, oh, people can't travel anymore, how are we going to solve it? So for the future, they're more aware that they have to develop the skills on the continent itself. And that's something that we are constantly talking about. This, we're also very happy to welcome Young Africa as a member of NABC, indeed to make that connection, because there is a demand for that. But how to connect and find, that's indeed a challenge, and that's something that we definitely will be able to work on.
Great. Jurriaan mentioned green economy as one of the future employers. Do you see that already, Nuria?
Yes, it's at the moment it's really about that green. Yeah, also from NABC, from our perspective, we said we want to have few members who are future-proof, that create that win-win situation. So we not only say we're also doing. When you look at the Dutch government, most of the missions, the outgoing missions, also the incoming missions, also focus on that. But also from our members' perspective. So they're seeing there are many challenges in terms of water management, but also green hydrogen that also offers a lot of opportunities for the coastal countries, for instance, Namibia, South Africa, etc. So there is definitely, there's definitely some, let's say, quite, a lot of opportunities in there. But again, it's about the skills, really, to help develop the skills. Just an example, it was Tuesday, because within the NABC we have also the DAP, the Dutch African Poultry Platform. So it consists of 27 Dutch companies active in the poultry, and one of them is Iris. So every time we go to one of the members, and then Iris was explaining how it is a MBO and applied science, etc. And they were explaining how that actually works in the Netherlands. For me, it was also an eye-opener, how they interact, and especially that working together with Dutch businesses. And I was like, why are we doing things differently in Africa while we're doing so well here in the Netherlands or in Europe? That's definitely something that, it can be applicable. We know how to do it. And that gap, like what you just mentioned, between what we, how we skill young people and what the market is demanding, it's
a lot of possibility for collaboration.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful. Susan, you have been Young Africa Zimbabwe director for over 10 years. What are the differences that you have seen in the last 10 years of the skills that you are requiring back then and the skills that are necessary now to be successful in the markets that they want you to do?
Thank you, Chris. Over the past 10 years, the youths in Zimbabwe, in sub-Saharan Africa, required technical skills for them to be self-sustainable, for them to be employable, for them to be entrepreneurs. But now, when we then look back and when we look at a young person or now, we see a young person who requires a holistic approach to development. Not only the skill, but it has become increasingly important that this young person must be healthy. I would like to talk about what HIV and AIDS has done, and then came ART, and it has kind of stabilized. Now we have a new menace, the drug and substance abuse, mental health itself. So without the necessary life skills that complement the technical skill of choice, we will lose that person. So as an organization that is developing these young people for employability and entrepreneurship, who would really want to come with our intervention and put it on a young person who is healthy. So the changes we are seeing are becoming complicated because of health issues that continue to come in, and that then requires the holistic development, putting in the life skill for the young people to be able to cope or mitigate the challenges that they may meet in the world. Need for awareness of the gender diversity, gender awareness. Need to know about how important the effects of these health menaces are to them. And I would like to say in Zimbabwe currently, we're really battling with mental health issues for these young people, especially caused by drug and substance abuse. So that is the biggest change that we've seen. And the deterioration of the economy itself, the depression within the job market itself, calls for more demand, especially in skills training. And I would like to say, you'll find that we cater for underprivileged young people who are not academically gifted. That is the young people that we were founded for as an organization. But believe you me, currently, because the job market is so depressed, even the university graduates require the technical skills for them to start their own small enterprises. So the changes are there, and they are glaring, and they need a holistic approach to youth development.
Thank you. Yeah, Young Africa, I think, is doing quite some substantial work in addressing those that you have just mentioned. I think over the last years we have actually developed quite a post-graduation program and a supportive program exactly addressing what you have mentioned. So yeah. Which support you think is required for youth to have the right and ability to feel empowered to transform the societies for the better?
The support is really multiple, but also I think it's the most critical part in terms of making you do better. I think the first one is really putting youth in charge. Putting youth in charge. And that requires a lot of courage. That requires courage from government to really understand that policy making, developing policies, is based on experimental learning and evidence. And those evidences cannot come from the government themselves. They can come from the youth practitioners, they come from the universities that are testing it, can come from businesses that are testing it. So that courage of putting youth together, creating a framework of process or processes where you know for sure that whatever I'm developing in terms of policy to be a framework that will really legislate a lot of people and organizations, like youth need to be at the center. But when I mean youth in that case, for any specific sector or industry, you get to get the youth expert or the youth experts in that field to be able to do that. For me, that's the first support, and it requires courage. The second one is really building an ecosystem, because youth employment, youth skills require an ecosystem, and that ecosystem is really can be built by these two different sectors mainly, but that's not only them. It's the government, the businesses, and also non-profit organizations. But I'm saying mainly because you have a lot more. Because right now, in terms of work, my biggest concern and my biggest challenge is what will be the next 10 best jobs in the next 10 years? If you don't know what will be the next top 10 jobs in the next 10 years, how do you plan that?
Very good question, yeah.
For me, that's the biggest thing. Then in that case, it means definitely we need to start having big data and anticipating. We need to also leverage what technology is offering us, artificial intelligence are offering us to be able to create that, to know where we're going. You mentioned earlier agriculture. If you look at right now, agriculture in Africa, I mentioned earlier we have 60% of the world arable land, which is, we have enough land, but do we have enough workers? Do we have enough people to do the work? The youth are disappearing from the continent, they just don't want to hang out anymore of the continent, which is a problem. And the farmers that are getting old. You know, the last data that I had, 62% of the African farmers are over 62. So what do you deal with that? So it's really aging. So now you create another problem. If you look at also educational system in Africa, the last data so that I've been working with is only 10% of the 100 graduates from schools find jobs. 10%. That's really low. What do you do with the 9? And this is why there is all the sectors besides those 3 sectors that I mentioned that are emerging. This is why you're having social innovators. This is why you're having social entrepreneurs. Because there is a lot of frustration for people who are saying, okay, I don't see myself only working in silo in the government. I don't see myself only working in silo in businesses. I don't see myself only working in silo in non-profit social sector. So those tri-sector leaders, leaders who don't want to really just see themselves in one sector, are trying to create a collective ecosystem to be able to navigate and maneuver those 3 different sectors, to get rid of the silo, but create framework and ecosystem that create the support that youth need. And it's only not youth, but job in general we have to do. Even it's really the biggest population of this world, youth, and how it's growing as well, it's youth, then I think we need to really put them in charge. For me, that's really the biggest support. And that requires a lot of courage from government, leaders, businesses, non-profits to have that courage and say, look, let's find the expert in this industry. Let's make it young people. Let's bring them. Just one last thing. Yesterday I was part of an initiative that we call Youth Standard. A couple youth organizations are presenting at the UN with with adoption from MasterCard Foundation, adoption from the International Youth Foundation, of a new framework that will if it's approved and tested, any organization will have to go through that framework, youth framework, to be able to do work with you. So there are questions they're testing. Do you have youth-friendly policies? Are you in charge in your organization? So I think that's one of the supports.
Jurriaan, listening to Pape, where do you think is the possibility for organizations such as Young Africa to address this, what Pape just mentioned?
To be honest, you mentioned Young Africa. I think they are already addressing exactly these issues. But if your question is what to do about all these challenges and what to do about this gap, what can, for example, governments do? Maybe I can share a little bit what the Netherlands is doing. We work on the basis of a youth policy. We have a youth strategy, Youth at Heart. Youth at Heart was started in 2020. It really puts youth at the center of Dutch development cooperation. The strategy was developed after a consultation with more than 1,200 young people from all over the world. They gave us their perspectives, their challenges, and the issues that they thought the Netherlands should be tackling for them. And out of that, we derived 3 priorities or pillars, and you'll recognize them. The first one is creating economic opportunities, so investing in jobs, investing in entrepreneurship, startups, scale-ups for both companies as well as young people. But with jobs alone and with companies, we're not there. So we also need to invest in the education, as I explained before. Proper education in consultation with the private sector, because we want to train young people for the jobs that will actually are going to be there in a couple of years' time. But we also listen to the young people. They ask us not to go with lengthier programs, but shorter, much more practical courses or trainings that really enable them to do jobs that are actually out there, or learning on the job trajectories, for example. Those kinds of investment programs is really what we're looking to support. So that's the second pillar on education. And the third pillar is exactly, so thank you very much, Mr. Samb, for mentioning this, about putting youth in charge. The third pillar is about meaningful youth participation, because that's the other thing that young people tell us. We want to be involved in the decision making that take place about us. We want to have a seat at the table. We want to be involved in a meaningful way. So that is what we share all around the world. We've set up our own youth advisory committee at the ministry, consisting of 10 young people from all over Africa and the Middle East that advise us, both solicited as well as unsolicited, on our policies, on our projects and programs. And we want to share that. We want to have that throughout all of our programming, all of our projects. We now have more than 20 embassies who have a local youth advisory committee who also advise these embassies of their programming and projects, exactly to give youth a voice and a seat at the table. And we would like our constant discussions with the UN, the EU, but we would like to see this spread around the world.
Take it farther.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, amazing. And definitely inspirational, I guess, for a lot of other potential implementers. One of potential implementers could be Dutch companies. In that sense, what you hear what Jurriaan is saying, and the experiences, and certainly also positive experience, that's why you're driving it also more. How do you see a possibility for Dutch companies to also give more voice to you?
Yes, definitely, especially the companies who are active on the continent. But I think it's not only the companies themselves, but it's really about inviting other parties to be present and, like you said, sitting at the table and discussing and having those young people in charge to know or to tell at least what they would like to achieve. So, but also for you as a young African, a very big role to play, and the fact that you are already, like, your network, it's definitely a good opportunity to connect with some of the members. Very practical things that we think or we take for granted. It's not always obvious for an investor or for companies. So sometimes they also need to be guided, or you have to show them the door or other possibilities. And I think that's a role for all of us to play in that.
Yeah, I also, Nuria and her team last week organized Back to Business meeting where I had the opportunity to meet a couple of people from Dutch companies, and it is like that. Like you're saying, they're open actually once you actually to explain what are the possibilities, the opportunities, and also how it can bring positive impact where they are working already. So they are very much open, I felt. Susan, from your perspective, we heard give youth more of a voice. What is Young Africa doing in giving a voice? What I know about the youth parliaments that were introduced quite a long time ago and are always an amazing thing to experience where youth is given a voice. But where do you see other places where youth is given a voice within Young Africa?
Thank you. Yes, the student parliament is one such body where each intake at Young Africa we have a representative from every training course that we have at Young Africa to be represented in the student parliament. So basically their role is to be the voice of students in the overall management of a Young Africa Center in a country. Other than that, what we have started doing is co-creation of activities, of initiatives with the young people themselves. So when we came up with the post-graduation support toolbox, it's what we sat down with the youth, and they've given us feedback to say, yes, we have graduated, we now have the skills, but the operating environment is not as conducive, or we are not competitive enough to get in there and produce goods or services against seasoned players or seasoned business people. So why don't we have a youth economic booth for us, where we come in, because we don't have capital. Young Africa, through its partners, you can put in equipment there. We come, we fulfill our orders, we go and sell, and we pay Young Africa a small fee. So co-creation is what we are doing. It's something that we have started recently, but that's what we are doing to kind of give youths the voice. The other thing, I think he mentioned that youth don't want to be sitting too long receiving training. They would want to learn something very fast, go out there and start making money, because that's what they are out there to do. So we've had we wanted to get young people into agriculture, and it's been difficult, especially in Zimbabwe, because they have to wait a whole season before they can make money. So we've sat down with them, what is it that you can do? I can create the palleting machine where we can do the feed formulation, we pallet it, because I'm a welder, I can create that machine, make money. The one who does the palleting for the feed for the animals can just create the feed. So that is in small periods of time. So that's the kind of co-creation. In Zimbabwe, we're not yet offering agriculture, but this is what is in the process with the young people, so that their voice can be heard. And we would really like to take it further from it being a Young Africa initiative, but go to the government, make it a policy, like you were saying, let them be heard and be the voice of the voiceless in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, truly, I think that's a way that we need to go, because I remember that you have advocated within Young Africa for a long time that we should have agricultural courses, and also looking at Zimbabwe being a very important producer, especially in the past. Unfortunately, not that much in the recent, but maybe you and Nuria need to have a conversation as well, because maybe some Dutch companies that are a lot of members can help us out. Looking towards the next 5 to 7 years, what do you wish for youth to have, and how can Ashoka as the organization that you stand in front of contribute to that?
What I wish personally.
Yes, personally.
Three things. The first one I would say power sharing. Really to have, I don't want to use the word establishment, but those who are currently sitting on power, whether it's government, and I really salute the courage. I think what you're saying here is really an example that we should share. And I'd love to talk to you about different countries and different governments. But the power sharing within government, within big institutions, within businesses, even within our own house, can we be willing, as the sole provider, to say I'm sharing the power with my kids, with my wife, collectively decide in the house? I think that's the first thing that I want. The second thing is the resource sharing. Those who are making decisions in funding, and that's another long debate, but just to give you a few data, in Africa, only 14% of philanthropic funding goes to local organizations. Even within Africa, our own African foundations, the Dangote, the all of those things, it's only 9%. 33% of that goes to their own operations. So pretty much, even Africans are underfunding themselves, let alone the global organization. So resource sharing, for me, is another thing that I wish that, yes, it's really good that organizations and institutions and powerful people and people who have resources want to do things. But sharing it right now, for me, creates more impact. And that's really what brings me to the third thing, which is collective impact. Let's figure out how do we scale up our work. Let's figure out how do we expand our work. Let's figure out how do we make sure that the individual impact that we can create, how can we double it, triple it with others with the same amount of resources. Without tripling our resources, we can triple our impact if we create collective impact. And these are, for me, the true things that I really wish for everyone. And I'm glad you already initiated a conversation between them to discuss about what can they do. So power sharing, resource sharing, collective impact, those are the three things. What can we do from an organizational perspective, from an Ashoka perspective? I think is that it's clear, really empowering the young Africa organizations and the likes of Young Africa. What they're doing, how can we amplify it? But doing it in a way that we know what is success today, what is success tomorrow, and what is success the next day. And that's very relative, and it's something that we need to individually define. What is my own success in this life, organizationally, what is my own success in life? For any government to be successful right now in this world, any government, they have to change what they're doing by starting with what you're doing, which is how can I look into collective impact? How can I put in charge those communities that I'm serving and not call them beneficiaries, but call them co-leaders? Because they're not benefiting. You are also benefiting, so call them co-leaders. How do you call it? I think for any government, you have to do that. For any business as well, to be able to be successful in this world, you really need to understand that it's not about only generating profit. It's about creating the well-being of those people who are buying my product to live longer, to be happier, to be able to sustainably and continuously buy my product. And lastly, for our own individual people, for us to be successful, we need to know that any technical skills or any repetitive skills that we acquire and can develop, robots and technology are taking it over. What can we do that robot cannot do that will make us successful? Thank you.
Thank you. Elaborate answer. Jurriaan, did Bob say it all? Or what are your wishes, your personal wishes as Jurriaan for youth in Africa?
Well, he did say it all, but so my personal wishes are more to do with perspective for young people, because that was your question. What do you wish for young people in Africa? Perspective in their personal life. You were referring to mental health, for example. Personal development is important. Of course, perspective in terms of economic opportunities, as I just explained, but also perspective in terms of democratic rights, a place in governance processes. That's very important. But for the moment, one of the most important perspectives is the perspective to a peaceful and secure livelihood in most of Africa, and unfortunately that's also under pressure in many regions. So it starts with that, and then the other perspectives I wish them as well.
Yeah, we need to build first the basis on which everything can grow on. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Nuria, there's already a lot of things that were said. I'm sure that you are agreeing on some of them, but it is also about Nuria and what you wish for.
What I wish for, freedom, but that relates also with perspective for the future. I think what people don't realize, or companies or whatever don't realize, that people will base choices of today on that perspective. What will that come? If they don't have it, they don't have that freedom, like to live. Just, an example, my parents, they have studied, I'm originally from Guinea-Bissau, and they have studied abroad and etc. And you would ask, okay, the level that they were living there, they could definitely go back. But there were so many uncertainties, and again, to that perspective, they stayed in the Netherlands and Portugal and in Europe. So it's really about how to create that perspective that people feel secure enough to say, okay, I will stay here, or I help develop my country and I will invest in here. And that's what I wish for everybody, that you have the freedom and not forced to make that choice. You have the freedom to say, okay, I'll go to Europe, or I'm happy here, and it's enough in my own country. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And last but not least, Susan, what would be your wishes for youth? Looking at that you work with them daily in Chitungwiza, and you also have youth yourself. So you have many children in the center, but you have your own. And looking at that, also, what would you wish for them growing up? And what can Young Africa also contribute?
Thank you. I'm just going to sum up what you said, and what I wish for the youth is independence. You say freedom, independence, in the sense that the youth have the power to do whatever it is that they feel this is me. They don't have to be coerced into doing anything. And if they believe it in themselves, that I can be the best mechanic, I can be the best hairdresser, I can be the best doctor, then it is up to them to be the best doctor they can ever be. And as Young Africa, we have this motto that if it is to be, it is up to me. So this is what I wish that every young person takes with them. That if it is to be that I am going to be a successful farmer, it is up to me. So everything that they can be, it's all here. We teach skills of the hands, we teach skills of the mind, and skills of the soul. So it's all in them and in their hands. And I wish that they use their hands, their minds, and their soul to be the best that they can be.
There would be a lot still to discuss, and we certainly will. But for now, I want to thank every one of you that you were present here and shared really interesting facts and personal wishes for the youth in Africa. Thank you very much.